Okay, and we are live.
Hi, everyone, and this is Commissioner Carol Myers, and I am welcoming everyone to the Legislative Review Committee meeting today, Thursday, October 3rd, in City Hall. We're up in 301B. Anyway, we have a quorum here with Commissioner Hool and Commissioner Wright, and myself and Commissioner Culpepper. So we're going to get going, and the first thing we will look at is approval of the Wednesday, September 11th minutes. We have a motion from Commissioner Wright. Do I have a second?
Second, the motion to approve.
Second from Commissioner Poole. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Going on, next thing on here is public input. So if we don't have any public input, we will move on to the commission identified item of interest, and I'll hand this over to interim county manager, acting county manager, Nikki Jones, to give us an intro to our solid waste residential collection zone discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. Okay, so today is probably the fourth meeting we've had on this topic. And at the last meeting, we all kind of came around a few very specific points on things that we needed to address and get some consensus on with this group. And we did so in a presentation format, work session presentation format, in preparation for next week, where we would do a work session presentation on this topic. We showed you a couple of options. We've done a comparative analysis of a number of places in Georgia, including Greenville, South Carolina as well, on how they approach franchising. And we think we have all the information ready to go in this presentation. Now, that being said, what's really important about this particular meeting is this is what we intend to show the full commission. So this is a bit unusual that we would do a work session for a committee item, but this is kind of a big deal as it relates to a topic that goes to the committee. So I think it's worthwhile. So we want to make sure that we have all the right information in the presentation to present to the entire commission at work session. So as we go through the presentation today, please use that lens. That, you know, how would your colleagues feel about this? How would the residents feel about this? Do we need to change anything prior to us going to the full body? With that being said, I will hand it over to Director Jansen, who's with us via phone. And if we can't hear Director Jansen, we have some folks here who are ready to jump in as well. Suki, kicking it to you.
Hear me from Middle Georgia? Can you hear me from?
Yes, very good. Loud and clear. Well,
I was gonna go through this as like a regular.
well, no, not loud and clear now. You're in and out.
All right.
So Suki, if we could, we're just going to kick it over to Susan. That's okay.
Sure. This is, like I said, what we are prepared to present next Tuesday to the Mayor and Commission, and are taking any final suggestions that you might have. So the presentation highlights, of course, is the purpose and the history. What we currently do, the franchising opportunities, the comparative analysis is what we've all looked at that I conducted, a cost estimate, and of course, a summary. And of course, the purpose is to present a summary of franchise hauling services in ACT. So this gives you the franchise history. I think we've seen this before. We can go through that. So we start with that, how is trash recycling currently handled? And this tells us what we're currently doing in the urban service district and the general service district. I think all of this we've seen before. This is just the final
Right.
put together.
This just means we don't have to be at work sessions.
Try, nice try.
I'm processing this.
You know, what everyone's gonna be questioning is cost, of course, and so, the collection rates that are current, or for our current FY 25 budget.
Well, if we could go back real quick,
Sure,
that is a new graphic, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
I like it.
yeah, that is what we, that's kind of how we quote. When people call us on the phone, when we say, because you don't know what a 20-gallon's gonna hold on a phone. So we tell you how many trash bags, and this is a graphic of what we verbally say to all of our customers.
And so this is important because we've got to kind of frame out current state to really be able to emphasize later on what those benefits that we're hoping to achieve is.
Yeah. And is there a why? I mean, we're getting into the details here. And I feel like the most important thing for me to feel real strongly about, to talk to my constituents, is the why. Because, and so I want to make sure that there's a big emphasis on that, not just the how on there, but the why this is important. And even on this, because again, I was looking at this at home. I probably have a 64-gallon. I put one piece thing of trash in there a week. Now I'm gonna have a 96-gallon, and it seems like, I mean, I understand what you all said, but I understand that most of the people in my neighborhood are not students. I mean, there are some families, but when I know the thing is, like, you have all these people who are getting the 21, but, trying to put 7 bags of trash in it like that. So, I feel like there's gonna be some pushback on that, like, that's absurd, like, that's a ridiculous size thing for a household that's using 1 or 2 bags. So I need more on that. Because that even feels like, to be convinced for me, I'm just saying on a personal level here, as a resident here on that. So I'm just thinking about the things that I'm gonna get pushback, because I have not, sharing this with residents, I feel like we are gonna get a lot of responses to this. So, but the important thing for me is to see that why real strongly up front. Because I feel like residents are gonna be looking at this as well, hopefully.
So we do have like a pros and cons slide to kind of give options, which is illustrated to try to give you the why. If you want that sooner.
I don't know, like, why are we even, this as Nikki says, like, what's the why behind this? Because it's a lot of details, and that details of this versus that is different than the why changing what we're doing now. Like,
Sure.
why are we even going into this? Here are the 5 points of why we're doing this and why this would be good for the community
And I'm certainly,
at the very beginning.
and I've made a note, and we'll certainly
Okay.
put that up front, absolutely. So it can be addressed, so people know why we're even talking about this.
Yeah.
But there's 2 parts to what we're talking about. But as I recall, talking about residential collection zones and or franchise approach, Suki also thought it was an appropriate time to address the current services and level that out. That's where the leaf and limb is being talked about. That's where getting one size talked about. She made it very clear, we want to keep our little 32-gallon one, we can't.
Mhm.
But new services, they would just be ordering one size as a common denominator for the community.
Well,
Based on the volume that's typically being picked up. So whether it's, well, like when we
Yeah.
talked about, I
Oh, right, right.
space to park that big one,
right.
I can keep the small one, but as far as new customers and new inventory, it's cheaper for them not to
Oh,
have.
I understood
the
that,
more
Alice. I
choices.
understood that. I mean, I understood that fine. I mean, that's it. But I mean, in terms of the why, the franchising, why are we having this discussion overall? When it comes to this, then you do get, I'm just anticipating problems with you saying that. Again, I got all these people who are gonna go, oh, yeah, they get to keep their little one. I gotta get this 34-gallon, 64 thing, and I don't want it, So that's a specific, but what I'm talking about here is just the big why, or why are we looking at franchising? The details of it, there's gonna be other whys in here, but I'm talking about the overall thing.
Current, right. But,
So
so you're saying you don't want to start with history? Back to the.
Actually, I really want to start with, I mean, I don't care if it's history first and why, but I mean, like, I want to know why there's a purpose, but why are we doing this? Why the summary of franchise solid, why are we even considering this, either before or after the history? Just like, for whatever the 5 bullet points are, or 3 bullet points, just right there.
The why is an introduction.
Gotcha. We got you.
Okay,
Right.
Got it.
We'll add a slide right after this.
Because it makes sense. I get it.
Yep.
We're talking about 96 for everybody or 64?
That's it. So in the last meeting, kind of, that came up as a topic, exactly that same concern that Commissioner Myers was referencing. What did I say? Triple.
Yeah.
Not wrong. He was referencing that is his average size for most of his customers in the 96. And so that tends to be more standard. And the footprint, from what I recall. of the-
Yeah, I remember
The
that.
footprint is roughly around the same between the 96 and the 64. It just happens to be like a little taller and a little wider. So I think they're just trying to appeal because it does cost additional money for
Mhm.
these haulers to have various sizes. So I think they're just trying to standardize it, the person cost savings.
But when you show that graphic of how many bags, and what the household is,
Yeah,
you know, that's a household of 10 people.
that's what it says.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what?
Well,
Not really.
we have a lot of students that that have multiple students in the 96. You know, we encourage, but right now, of course, it's the cost savings because we're a pay-as-you-throw now.
Right.
And so some still get the 96 roll cart, just to be sure that they have enough room for the week. We have busy holidays, y'all know we produce trash during game weekends.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, and usually we have a lot of parents that call in and order their, for students that are moving in. And they must always, I would say 85 to 90% choose the 96 gallon. They want the largest one.
And isn't that the size of the recycle?
It is the size of the recycling, which is a standard issue. The 96 is the standard issue.
So recycling has always been 96.
It is. We have a few 32, but we try to hold those. You have to specially request it. But we try to hold those for people that have a little more difficulty rolling them to the curb. Maybe some of our elderly residents or someone that might have a little more difficulty.
Mhm.
If they don't specify and ask for it, we are going to issue a 96
Mhm.
because recycling's bulky. And it's just me and I have a 96 and I don't have to put mine out every week. I put mine out once a month. So for recycling, not trash, for recycling.
And Commissioner Culpepper, I think at the last meeting, we talked basically, long story short, on the 96 gallon, it's an economy of scale for everyone. It makes things just cheaper, just having one size.
Yeah.
I understand that. If we go to, this is saying $34, the estimated $30 to $38 per month. So if you are in the residential area, like you're inside the
Current services.
current service area, is yours going lower too? That makes sense.
It does, and I think that's kind of what we need to fully understand here is it's really going to depend on what services we're being asked to provide.
Yes.
Are we trying to provide bulky waste every week? Bulky,
Bulky waste.
bulky, is that right? And then leaf and limb, we do leaf and limb. No, we don't do leaf and limb.
No.
So do we, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just depends on the service.
We found in the comparative analysis that I did that almost all communities that are our size that I called offered all four. At least trash and recycling weekly, almost all of them had a brown container for yard waste. And then bulky waste was included in their bill. So that was part of it. Yes,
I
sir.
mean, I think that's great, but even the people inside the residential area, they're just gonna go lower, but can solid waste afford to lower? I mean, is that gonna create a deficit in their budget?
I think the idea is that we would gain efficiencies, both in terms of the routes that we run, in terms of making sure we have that guaranteed population base across the board. My understanding from Suki, and Suki, I don't know if you want to chime in, if you can hear us, is that we would gain some operational efficiency.
That's great, yeah.
Suki, do you agree with that?
Yes, and I can finally, I've been sitting in the same spot. Sorry, y'all. And finally, for some reason, I have better service. But yes, we would gain some efficiencies by shoring up edges of our service area, turning over. There are a lot of edges of our service district that don't make sense. Why we do it and somebody else doesn't. We have lots of roads where we go down 3 houses, turn around and get out of there. Private haulers then go and pick up the rest of the road. So there's a lot of benefits and efficiencies to be gained if we go down this path.
I think that needs to be part of
So
it.
the map, yeah, so that identifying that the mapping also is changing for efficiencies.
Yes.
I didn't pick that up earlier, with the residential collection zone update, I guess. And I think it is good that in the analysis, there was discovery that we weren't anticipating seeing, which is the service for the first people that it's mandated for. And then trying to level out the playing field for the whole community. And I want to make sure we answer the questions that came forward from the chair. Didn't think we were going to be reviewing the work, the presentation, but let's make sure we don't miss those questions that were
Absolutely.
needed to be.
Hopefully this won't take that long. But yes, and that, my understanding is that operational efficiency that's gained is usually beneficial, both for us and our solid waste department, but also for the private haulers as well, because they'll be able to do the same with their routing.
And it could be that there would be an update, because since we're not supposed to be having 10 people living in a house in most areas, single family, I'm wondering to what Carol's saying is you've got maybe 2 people wondering why we're going with the common denominator being the 5 people one versus the 64. But, and then with the change or the look to have one size, you can still get multiples. Right? We're still allowed, like right there, it says 264, people are still able to get, would still be able to get multiple.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
For those who have not caught on to recycling yet,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and this is this is what we're doing right now.
When I describe this, when we describe this to the customers, the 96 gallons, I'll tell you, was our largest one, said that's really, it's 1 bag of trash a day. That's a lot of trash. Yeah, right. But you're covered with the 96 you have in the room. It should cut down on littering and even.
And Suki, sorry, we'll probably get into this. If we move forward, are we going to continue backyard service, or are we going to, okay, we are.
We would continue backyard service, and so would the private haulers.
So I think that's important to say.
Yeah, specific.
Yeah.
Are you speaking of the backyard for people that have a doctor's, a medical?
I just wanted to clarify. I want us to be able to say.
Not just additional. Okay,
Because that's the first thing people will think about.
absolutely.
2 people in a house, they're 70 years old or older, how they gonna roll that thing?
No, it will be.
I appreciate you moving the age bracket up.
So then we give them a history, obviously, of the current customers and the rates and the numbers based on what was reported to me for the waste minimization fee. These are self-reported numbers. There's some of the why. We just need to move it up, is your suggestion.
And as the mission for us, solid waste residential collection zone or franchise, isn't it all the same discovery study that we're doing?
It is.
Is that right?
Yes, yes, it is, yes.
Oh, Commissioner Holt.
Yeah, so this was the one Y slide I saw, and it has a lot of the Ys, but not all of them, I thought. So one thing that really stuck out to me was that we're really weird, right? Like everyone else does it differently and more efficiently. And I don't know how much that needs to be in a slide, but when you're noting the other markets later on, maybe it makes sense to just sort of underscore as a Y element, like we've really learned that, what we're doing here is kind of bizarre and not as well as all these other communities, even though there's difference in how they do what they do. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that under the why not, I don't like this not an open market argument. So all of the providers get to bid the same way we do with any other situation.
Sure.
And it's not like the open market that people are dealing with, it's really all that open when you consider the differences between HOAs or not and how much leverage individual customers have and all that. So, I'd prefer to not frame that as like a negative because that's a framing some people might use, but I actually think when you really examine what's going on here and how we're doing it, that's not like a fair characterization, I guess. And I've actually talked to a number of folks in District 6 who brought that concern, like, hey, we're kind of impinging on like free market and like people's, private businesses and stuff like that. And I kind of explained, again, how we're unique, how other communities do it, and how we're actually giving everybody the chance to bid. And we're even talking about doing more or smaller zones than we might otherwise to really give people more of a chance that are smaller providers. And that honestly like resonated really well with a bunch of folks I've talked to who came to me with that argument. So I'd rather, reinforce it.
Do you think the second bullet covers it?
Yeah, I think that's true. Like some people do have that.
Because to me, the perception is the individual doesn't have the choice,
Mhm.
but also the individual is left with the complaint.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying to get, as community service providers, we're trying to streamline the ability to address the issues.
Yeah.
And why are we doing?
I think y'all just said the same thing.
Yeah, but that's captured in the second bullet.
Yeah, I think the second bullet point is enough.
Yeah.
I agree.
The other thing I wonder, again, I get the desire to try to be providing kind of like an objective balance thing or something, but like each of those why nots, we have a stronger why, which is why when we're trying to balance things out, we're deciding to do this. And so, like the way this is presented, it makes it seem like I'm kind of weighing these things that I don't want to lose against these things that I want to gain. But, there's actually things to be gained when it comes to the, like the difficult to do when self-hauling is allowed, but we're planning to not allow self-hauling. So like, the why not might be more like we're removing self-hauling. But does that make sense? Like, I don't know how much we want to make a case against ourselves when the arguments people might make that are concerns are things we've talked about at length in here and staff has analyzed even more. And we have like even stronger evidence for why we think we should, even though those are concerns.
I think one of the reasons it's up there is also, I've been through this process before through the public meetings.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is what we hear.
Right.
Over and over and over again. And I think it's just, we put it in as a form of transparency to say, we've heard this before, or to also let commissioners know, but you might hear it again.
So maybe if it's instead like, why do this? And then like concerns we've heard.
Yeah.
Perhaps
Yeah.
with a note that's like, and here's why we're doing it,
Yeah.
even though we've heard those concerns, right?
And that might be, this is micro PowerPointing, but having that as a separate slide, the
Yeah.
concerns, because some of these and like the waste reduction goals to me, like I want to say makes landfill last longer. I mean, that's, just in terms of understanding that versus, because I think the higher land, isn't that what that is? High land potential for expanded waste reduction, doesn't have to do with like,
Yeah.
and I want that like helps, landfill will last longer this way.
Yes.
Because not everyone's in there. So, yeah, I like that having concerns. But isn't it in terms of the open market, isn't it like, it's not, and I don't know if this is captured somewhere else in there. You're not leaving it. Why not? The individual doesn't have a choice now. Is that what we mean? I mean, open market is the market choosing which one, but it's also getting back to the people who've talked to me, like, I don't have a choice. I do all this recycling. I have one bag of, trash every 3 weeks. So you're reducing that. And again, actually, as I appreciate the awareness of the public having gone through in a second round of firehouse sites, when people don't see their concerns, they feel very, that's unheard. You need to anticipate those concerns up front. I think. So I think that is helpful.
So we're going to change it to concerns. That makes a lot of sense. And so, for example, the open market will go away. It sounds like really the residents, I heard some agreement there. But also self-hauling, really what we're saying, self-hauling is just going to go away, right? That would be a concern. Self-hauling would go away. And as a separate bullet point, there would be mandatory trash and recycling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. Exact those two.
I mean, after you hear the concerns, after you hear the concerns and more raises up about not having self-harm, so does that mean we stick with,
No, I mean,
We went with
For the
franchising.
franchise.
that's what I mean?
Yes, ma'am. We went with franchising. We would recommend that self-haulers would not be allowed.
So if I'm thinking of the way we like to reframe this, like the concern we hear is that we're disallowing self-hauling and we're making this mandatory. And then here's the reason, right? So it's like concern, reason we're doing it. Instead of just like concern floating over here, like a big negative we've left unaddressed. Does that make sense as like town's presentation?
Well, the other thing, we're trying to make it equal, quality. Because I don't even know if it's half. Half of the community, it is.
that's the first thing, right?
So
First point.
So when you divide this, the second bullet under concerns, mandatory trash and recycling service from single family homes now required for the full community,
Right, not just.
not just those of us who it already is.
That makes sense.
And I know cost has its own separate slide later on, but I mean, a huge selling point here, I think, is that people pay the same or less and get more services. I mean, so like
Theoretically.
theoretically, based on the studies we've done and the evidence we see in other communities, that's what we're expecting, right? And so, that's right. I mean, that's arguably like the biggest selling point of this is that, you know, more for less, like it's a win-win.
We'll get to that, but I mean, I just pulled up my bill. It's not that much less, you know? I mean, it's not like I'm paying $30. We're not talking about changing it that much, right? So,
No, it's not life-changing, but
Yeah.
we are talking about you probably having more services than you currently got. And
Get more.
I get that, I get that.
Yeah.
Maybe I am.
So there's,
Theoretically. We haven't seen the contract
we're
yet.
talking about why we're doing this.
Yeah.
That's why.
There we go.
One comment about, instead of requiring, franchise haulers to more clean fuel truck. We need to be careful with that because you requiring them to buy a more expensive truck, your rate's gonna go up. And, you know, the life of a gas truck versus an
Mhm.
electric truck is different. So we just need to be careful with that when we're talking about the cost. 'Cause if we're requiring them, then all of a sudden our monthly costs are going up. It might be because we're making them drive more expensive trucks.
Yeah, I don't remember
Me neither. I'm so that.
the municipality, that, I don't remember that change.
Yeah.
We maybe should take that one out,
Okay.
because the environmental benefits are gonna come from the lack of 4 different haulers.
Yeah,
And-
I'd
and
focus on
everything.
that. That's gonna be a
Efficient.
distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just stop.
See that.
Well, I had told remember how long it took us to get it to where we had neighborhood zones for the elementary school?
Yeah, that's another why though.
That was-
Let's see, like a side conversation. That was another why that Allison just brought up that I don't see on here is the fewer trips on people's streets, right? Reducing.
It says that, but see, I think the environment, I actually think there's I think the environmental
Where does it say
benefits
that?
could be broken down.
Yeah,
Traffic,
it's kind of mixed in
municipality,
there.
I'd separate those things a little bit in
Oh,
there.
okay. Sure.
I'm not saying can require franchise. I think that's been addressed. That's kind of a general
Mhm.
statement for franchise in all communities.
Mhm.
Yeah, just distracting.
Okay.
Cause
So we
those,
separate that one. And we'll eliminate the clean fuel.
Covered under the RFP term bullet point, right? We can dictate
Yeah,
terms.
I mean, basically you could make requirements in an RFP.
We want to require everyone to wear a teal hat.
I think that's, yeah. I think that one might be a little.
It's probably not as.
Okay, so can we get a comparative analysis?
The chief's saying the comparative analysis showing that
Oh, great.
They're up to 45% cheaper than what we talked about with more services provided. So as you're saying, it may not be cheaper than what you're currently paying, but you are going to receive more services.
Okay.
But go back, street sweeping?
We got,
One of the ones that we had 5, and street sweeping was included, and it was weekly.
In neighborhood?
Yes.
To be that free
Yeah.
market, making people bid. Fuck, make them compete.
And so continue to kind of highlight it. Y'all should share, we
Yeah.
kind of wanted to have a
Yeah.
nice.
I don't know if we spoke about this last time, but one of the updates that I received was, and we've heard so much about, I guess, with the hurricanes, but from the first time I called them weeks ago to the second one where you gave me questions and I called them, they've stopped recycling. They're getting out of the recycling business. Augusta,
Oh,
Richmond.
as a municipality.
As a municipality, that she said, we're getting out of it. It is just not cost effective. And they've decided to just scrap the whole.
I know their nature did not like that decision.
Too soon.
That is a little addition from the first time when I called and gave you the analysis that now Augusta, Richmond has just,
Do they have their own landfill?
yes.
Okay, so their landfill will just run out sooner too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But I guess the current, maybe they're just gonna, they're looking at current cost of.
Okay,
Okay. So then we get into the cost estimate.
yeah.
Just to kind of share that overview and the estimates that, our consulting company has kind of shared, we could potentially see.
And what's the current, service district number?
Oh, you mean zone wise?
No, well, what we have.
Where
broken down.
in
How many,
Athens-Clarke County?
how many is in the service district?
With us, the service are approximately 10,000. I'm gonna give you a very rough estimate.
10K, and then this would be the expanded.
Yes.
Or
So it'll make itself all in.
Wait, this is be expanded, so there, I'm just making sure I understand.
Sure.
This includes the 10,000? Or that
It
does? Okay.
That's all.
Oh,
of
the
our-
whole thing, the whole,
Yes.
okay.
okay, so
Households.
potential total, and right now we've got 10, so there's 28,000.
Mhm.
We're basing it on numbers that they set from Fort.
And we have maybe 24 self-haulers that go through our rental to say it.
Have a little more than that. According to staff.
How many?
We
We have the data only from COVID, which would be different than that.
right, we don't have it normal.
And I thought that was important. Suki brought up how that is also a behind current times mode, having mom and pops coming through the landfill line.
We are very behind the times of other current communities our size. It has helped with their illegal dumping and littering. I've spoken to them, especially Greenville, we talked to them about.
The Greenville and the landfill.
Yes.
I
County, right.
just want to ask you to repeat that first.
Yeah, it is still a municipality in Mesta.
Allison, what was the number that you just referred to? I just didn't hear it.
The one that you had asked about, which we don't really know the number, I was joking that there were
Okay.
24 people that self-haul
Okay.
out to the
Well,
landfill.
I thought that would be very convincing why. if that was-
But that's what Suki was saying, the only number they have is from the pandemic.
From the pandemic,
Which-
okay. Okay,
People
yeah.
had more time to do that. People were also.
And we were
cleaning out
taking,
areas.
we were taking appointments. And so
That's it.
with the appointments, I can pull together and
That was just-
get the data.
Yeah, but the data being different because people were also cleaning out areas that they had not
Mhm.
given attention to. But anyway, but the
Commissioner-
38,000 is what the total customer base would be. So we have the households and 10,000 of what's currently being served.
It's Clark County is a rough estimate,
And the
yes.
majority is
Yeah.
under the self-hauling
It
or
fluctuates.
private. Thanks.
Commissioner Hull, you,
I don't know if this needs to be on a slide, but I think it would be good to mention it during the presentation somewhere. I don't know if you want to frame it as illegal dumping or landfill life or whatever, but the folks who come to the landfill and dump garbage that's not actually from Clarke County. I mean, this is also this is a way for us to dramatically reduce, if not eliminate that, right? And that's a mix of like what can happen with
Yeah.
self-haulers as well as what happens with these private hauler companies that we aren't able to hold accountable.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know if that needs to be on the slide somewhere. I do hope that gets mentioned because I think that is it's a headache for staff to try to even regulate. We're not doing it well. It's making our landfill lose its lifetime even faster and from people who don't even pay taxes here, right? So.
Yes.
And going into this side.
It just gives an overall for the 5 total zones, an RFP, to solicit for the 4 zones and then 1 zone to be serviced by the Athens-Clarke County Solid Waste Department. Mandatory residential collection service, which we've talked about here, eliminating that self-hauling. I would like to do further, we talked about getting more information and speaking to the person that's actually in charge of Columbus. They do have the low income fee reduction. You have to apply for it. And I don't have the details for you right now as far as their qualifications and how they qualify. They have somebody that's what they do. That's their job. And you have to qualify every year. So you do requalify. So it's something that could be very effective here. And thinking about, like we said, the leaf and limb, containerizing it, maybe even adding food scraps. That's where we want to grow our compost operation and of course bulky waste.
Susan, can you go back there, or you go back to the previous slide? Does this count bulky waste here?
Bulky waste.
No, it just.
It doesn't, and part of that is, and speaking references, I think, last meeting, is because the commission has already funded a bulk waste program for the whole county.
Can we get a total cost to the customer? Because I'm seeing the total cost to the customer on the high end at $38 per month, right? Just it's estimated. But that's not including the add-on of bulky waste. Is that my understanding that correctly?
Correct, that's already been funded through a separate program that would serve the whole.
Where's the 30?
So you'd like to know what the addition for $38 it would be to add bulky waste?
Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to think about this from the resident perspective. You know, I know I'm going to pay the maximum of estimated $38 per month, but there's another cost for bulky waste. So if you can total cost, estimated total cost on the high end for the resident.
So,
You want to make sure it's rolled in. after the
Right,
first
right, I
year
do
is
too.
budget funded. Otherwise, where's it going to show up next year in your budget? For it to be in the enterprise and continue after the equipment's been bought.
Am I asking it correctly or is it?
You are, Vicky, I don't know if you can hear us. One of my concerns is obviously this work session is next Tuesday. So we got to have this work session presentation to Jean today. And I know that's a number, you're asking for a cost estimate to include additional service. I don't know that the consultant will have that by Tuesday, but we can still try. So can you that's manageable for us to ask Atlantic Consulting and see if that's something that we could share verbally on Tuesday?
I don't know that they could. I can call them right after we hang up here.
And it's also okay if what goes out in the packet
We can always add to the agenda.
is this.
Yeah.
And then.
Right.
You can
Update.
say it.
Yeah, and then it's updated
Yeah.
as, yeah.
I guess I'm just, and I don't know if I'm the only one who has a private hauler among commissioners or not in this room, you know, who's paying one. And I'm looking at it, I'm supposed to be, I'm supposed to be getting my trash from the most expensive hauler, curbside. And I just pulled up my recent bill and I'm paying $27 a month for a whatever kind, I don't know what it is, but I'm like, so we're talking about a $10 a month increase for this. And what I'm getting now is I'm getting trash and recycling and limb comes, I got a lot of limbs, but it comes every six weeks or whatever. So again, I'm bringing this up as anticipation of the kind of response, because I am not an overall complainer on things like this, so I'm like, I just think we have to be prepared here on this.
If you're right.
Because it's a big, I mean, to me, I'm like, oh, you say I'm getting more services, but what am I really getting? I already got those 3 services. So,
You get bulky waste already?
no, but that bulky waste wasn't in that last one, was it?
That's right. And do you get leaf and limb every week?
No, but,
I'm just saying,
you know,
so you-
right. And I mean, bulky waste, I don't have that much bulky waste, you know, I mean, I do have a door that I'm trying to get rid of, but it's not like, you know, like that's like, I got bulky waste every week that I'm trying to get rid of. So, I'm just, and I'm bringing this just up as anticipation of what's going to be asked and brought up.
I think one of the things that, and maybe they, and Suki, I'm sure has addressed this with you, is, you know, the litter abatement committee, when they studied everything that's spent, we've spent almost $1 million on illegal dumping.
Yeah,
And that's bulky waste, I understand that. Well, we're also spending it on the people that are dumping the bulky
well,
waste.
back to that Y slide, that's why that Y slide, and I wanted to see if that illegal dumping was put in.
Yeah.
Like, where is it in there?
It's the last one.
And like, will you just put something right in there, how much we're spending
Sure.
on that? Because again, as a community making decisions about things, if we're spending, it's good to know that. Like, if there's money of here.
Yeah, I guess I totally agree. I really am today, but, my area is large. It's probably the most rural area. And there has got to be something that they're, and I do agree with the bulky. What you doing? I was looking for something. I'm sorry, I was just trying. And I do think one of my biggest complaints in like Nowhere Road, Hager Road, all of those outlining areas is the bulky dumping, mattresses and stuff like that. So I do think if I'm going to support something like this, that it needs to be spelled out. I'm gonna catch hell either way, but if I'm going to support it, I do need to make sure that stands out some kind of way in those rural areas. Yeah, that was my.
You talk, and speaking of the bulky waste, like, do we know where the bulky waste is coming from that we're having to spend stuff in the community picking up? I mean, I'm just thinking of your area and I'm thinking
Well,
that's
they-
close to
those-
Madison
They
County.
put up the, is it lock cameras. I heard it's been working now. How
Yeah,
that, so okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Saw him this morning, he walked through and he's got some all new ones that he's.
Oh,
We have Suki.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, very loud and clear.
Hi, good. Hey, about 85 to almost probably 90% of what we're finding with the cameras, it's coming from Athens-Clarke County residents. Bulky waste being thrown on the side of the road. Very minimally, it's Barrow County, Oconee County, Jackson County, but by and large, what we're seeing are Athens-Clarke County residents dumping bulky waste on the road in our camera program.
But this is, we have like, I thought it was something like 60% of the people who live in Athens-Clarke County rent. So, I mean, do we know how much of this is coming from, multifamily versus single family?
That we don't have. I mean, I don't know that we could find that out from the municipal court judge after the cases when they get fined. I would have to ask the attorney's office. I'm not sure that's possible, but maybe.
It would depend on their data. We can always get an open records request to the support. I don't know that addresses are.
No, I was just, I wasn't with your specific case. I was just, again, anticipating where the.
So have we given citations for any of the bulky dumpers?
Not heard that completely, Commissioner Thornton. Have we seen the citations? What was it?
I said, have we been given citations to any of the bulky dumpers?
Have we given citations out to folks who are illegally dumping?
Did we lose you, Suki?
Yes.
We have.
That's my understanding.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Up at 250 citations?
Two hundred fifty citations or $250
Yeah,
per
ma'am, over
citation?
250.
Over 250 citations.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if Sue can speak to this, because I'm not sure if all of those are bulky, like, in terms of like, a furniture piece.
Right.
Because my
Versus-
colleagues, prosecutors, we have lots of citations. A lot of them are just bags of household trash, but a lot of them are also sofas and a lot of them.
Well, trash too.
Okay.
It blows up and it opens out and it ends up everywhere. So, yeah, I'm not, I'm good with that. I mean, I'm not good with 250, but I'm good with
It's,
50.
yeah. No, I understand that. I'm just.
As much stuff that we're
Yeah.
seeing,
Yeah,
we need to make it clear in our presentation why this is why. You know, so someone comes to me that lives in one of these outlying areas, look, we're gonna pick up two. Blah, blah, blah. This is the reason. So I think there should be as many reasons in bullet points or talking points for
Right.
us, because it's going to,
we're gonna have to make them.
yeah.
Yeah, and the bulky, and the reason I'm asking that about who's doing it, because if this is going to residential areas, is it going to solve the bulky waste problems that we're talking about or not, you know, I mean, so that's, the two things aren't necessarily connected. By adding the bulky waste to the residential areas, that's not necessarily gonna solve the other issue.
It's bulky waste like sofas and stuff. So we're gonna pick that stuff up once a week.
That's possible, yes.
Right now, it's on call.
What about stuff that like tires and paint and stuff like that? How are we gonna? If that's not,
Charm.
Charming?
We can pick it up, though. We do pick it up with special pickups that we
Okay.
charge them. And then we will take it to Charm. We will separate it
Okay.
and do that. Especially tires.
Yeah.
Some people don't have a vehicle to haul a tire. Or somebody got something in the house, an elderly person or something. Yeah, that happens.
It could be that the litter abatement committee needs to do a summary as a, not presentation, but auxiliary material. Because that's giving it all the junk south totals that are coming from the downtown development authority, the solid waste, all the extra cleaning, the once a week, all that kind of stuff. That could be a handout to go with the work session for extra backup.
I think that this should, connect, we just passed the nuisance abatement, that Tuesday.
Yeah, the change.
The changes, so I do think they go hand in hand, when we're talking about trash. This is more, the nuisance abatement, and Sherry can correct me if I'm wrong, is more property kind of oriented.
Zero.
Yeah, zero net property. And I guess my thought is, yeah, but it's still a nuisance, it's still litter and stuff. So it's probably the right time to put these together to help again, developing those talking points. Use your clean, beautiful Athens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Athens-Clarke kind of beautiful.
and this is why.
The litter pickups, I mean, summarizing how many adopted highways there are in the, 4 times a year that they mandate the pickups. They've got tallies of the tonnage that's picked up and that sort of stuff. And having that data, some of the questions we don't know. Would you kick this in 3 years from now? In the time frame of how long it's gonna take. It could be 3 to 4 years ago, we're saving millions of dollars in those what's currently being.
Sure, definitely part of your conversation.
Beautiful. But that would be
Good.
some additional material that wouldn't need to be in the PowerPoint.
No.
It's supportive materials. There we go.
So this slide is really important now, because this is a topic that obviously is here in discussion. We've had several meetings on this. It also is in discussion, with the Solid Waste Advisory Commission. But this is really the slide that captures what the recommendation would be from this committee. And so I just want to highlight that for y'all. Obviously, Susan's already kind of referenced what's contained here. But as we end this work session presentation review, and we kind of transition to making sure that y'all are in alignment here, I just want to share if there's any changes that come up from the subsequent discussion, we would reflect that here on this slide. We want this slide to capture the summary recommendation from the
We have a lot of issues with contracts. As we delve into this, I guess not today, is there some timelines that we can get as we move through? The HOA, just a timeline on how things.
There,
There.
look.
We have
Here.
here.
Oh, man. Oh, we're so quick.
If this captures what you're looking for, this is
No, that's good.
what's, Suki and Susan have kind of prepared to
Well, I
kind of
don't
show.
see also the procurement of the consultant to assist in blah, 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 RFP.
That would be the next vote.
And
No.
so my thing is right under there, I guess it goes under there. What would be the timeline to do the legal issues, getting the contract, somewhere between there and the May?
Right.
For the franchises or for the RFP?
Where was on the slide before?
Okay, so for this,
July,
that
I guess.
first February, that is talking more about the consultant that's gonna help us in just developing the RFP by which we will have these haulers that are currently private haulers, competitively bid, and I shouldn't really say bid because that's a whole separate process, but competitively apply, to, potentially become a franchisee.
One of the four.
Yeah, and so what I think you're referencing is really more, so in July, August, you'll see that RFP is released, so we could be preparing between that, after that consultant's procured, we would be working with that consultant to refine what should be included in that RFP, because this is a pretty technical, request for proposals, to make sure we just capture everything in a consistent way where we can hold these haulers accountable to the, expectations of the commission and the community. And so I think what you're referring to, and just correct me if I'm misunderstanding, is that you really want to make sure we're also adding in here explicitly, what is that timeline once we award those franchisees by which we would anticipate contracting for them?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I guess I'm asking that because a lot of times when we vote on anything, it usually has a legal leg to it. And because it's presented to us, we're thinking it's gonna roll right out like that or do this. But it usually has to go through our attorney in some kind of way, shape, or form. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm starting to focus in on now. What is the real timeline? This is the process, but what is the real timeline we're going?
I'd also like to put a bullet before this, is that if a franchising, that would say like November, December 2024, franchising, whatever approved, like so that there was an indication of when the vote would be by the mayor and commission on this, right at this point.
Similar to that process slide that we had in the last meeting where we kind of talked about work session presentation on this date.
Yeah, or even just that, like, even at this point, that wouldn't start, like, if franchising approved, just that, that's all I
Okay.
need here, so that we would know if you shared this, if I shared this with my constituents, they would know we were voting on it, when we were voting on it, and how it would go, so just to have
So
that.
the real next step here is the work session next week.
Right,
And then after the work session, if all goes well,
right.
take it to the voting meeting in November.
To vote on,
To vote on, that's right.
that's where we are.
That's
Can we go back to the next slide?
what?
Exactly that. Well,
The franchising summary so that the timeline of the next slide can set in motion.
yes, and I want to defer to Attorney Hines here, because once we get to consensus on all of those things right there, it's got to be put into a document, whether that document's an ordinance or a resolution, I think matters, because that's what you're going to be voting on.
Yeah, so what I can say is after our last meeting, I spoke with Attorney Drake, and I think there is some concern about trying to pass an ordinance that's intended to be comprehensive on a very quick timeline and with it having a effective date, essentially 2 years or so out in the future. So I think what the attorney's office would probably say is that, not saying you couldn't necessarily do it, but from a legal perspective, it might be best to wait and pass an ordinance after we've had the ability to work with a consultant and get a better idea of what's gonna be in that RFP. So I'll give you an example. So I looked into Columbus, or not Columbus, excuse me, Lowndes County. The main reason I chose Lowndes County is that theirs was litigated extensively. So in 2012, they passed a franchising ordinance that they passed in December 2012. It went into effect in February 2013, and it promptly resulted in litigation because the franchise ordinance granted exclusive haul-in to one vendor, a private vendor, so it wasn't a county-run vendor, but the one vendor that got it, and then there was one vendor that had been operating in Lowndes County. They then sued, basically saying, you're depriving us of our ability to operate. That went all the way to the Supreme Court in Georgia, and Lowndes County was successful, so that's fantastic. But ironically, as I was telling Nikki, I learned that I think in 2015, they then changed it, and so now they have the two. So the one sort of lost the battle, but I guess ultimately sort of won the war. In either case, their ordinance, and I brought a copy, it's 23 pages. It had a recent amendment in 2023. In fact, it was amended in 2015. This is the 2015 ordinance. And what you'll find in this is this in many ways reads like a contract. In fact, it even has like indemnity requirements for the franchisee. So I think it is fair to say, and obviously we'll do whatever the commission wants, that it would be very challenging to put an ordinance in place, particularly of this level of complexity, and knowing that it would start for a number of years. But as we've also talked about, I think it's important for legal perspective that we have direction from the mayor and commission as to what you want us to do, because this whole process will be costly. And so that's one of the reasons we were discussing that maybe a resolution to begin this process, to begin preparing the RFP, to basically set the ball rolling, to direct the staff, begin preparing the ordinance with the consultant, and then we'd have everything ready to go. I do think we would need to pass the ordinance with some sort of lead time with the effective date, just for that transition period, whatever that may look like, but a consultant would also probably be best able to tell us what's feasible in that.
So if we did a resolution to be voted on in November, would this be enough not to, would this wording right where it says franchise? Right. If we did that and we use that word, and I'm really glad you suggested that we look at the ordinance a little bit after the consultant comes on. Because there may be new information that pops up, and it's easier to maneuver a resolution than an ordinance.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that, because when this gets out, then you're going to find all those ways to get in here in the first place. And so I do think that it gives us some conversation.
John?
So do we know the cost, what it's gonna cost us to go through all this?
The consultant.
The consultant and everything, anticipated legal fees and all that stuff, I mean, is it gonna be expensive?
From a legal view, like, I think we would handle all this in-house with the addition of the consultant assistance, which we do in some other cases, like the airport, for instance, is one that we do. So I don't think the legal expenses would be significant, but I can't speak to the consultant.
What about there would be a cost for the hauling consultant or the franchising consultant?
Yeah.
Would that come out of the general fund or out of the landfill enterprise?
Enterprise fund? I would defer to Suki. Suki, can you hear us?
I can, and we don't have it in our budget now, so I for consultants, but
We have to make an amendment to the budget.
Yeah, so we'd have to make an amendment, we'd have to vote on an amendment to the budget to pay for this.
That's probably out of contingency.
Right.
Yeah, so in the vein of the work session and launching this out, we would want to have, like, as the next steps, voting on a resolution to capture this. So the detail of this first bullet to get started,
Right.
right? And then there would be checkpoints. We would have to approve
Back to
whoever
the other.
won the RFP. And they're making, that person's making RFPs for the haulers. I mean, it's a very
Yeah.
cascading
It is.
thing. And then maybe, with your all's expertise, you'd be saying anticipated vote and approval. So those are all checkpoints too, which is gonna be helpful, one, for people not to just think it's gonna automatically
Right.
happen. And the details that might come forward now that we don't have, and people will know that by that next motion, we'll know that by the next thing.
Yes, we'll add
Right,
that.
likewise.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that captures, there was another question that came out in the email about, are we okay if the zones have different prices? Did I read that right?
No, the number of zones, I think it was the number of zones.
Well, each zone could have a different price, right? So if you
Yeah.
Yeah.
bid in the zone at $30 because the
Oh.
highest bid in the zone was 40.
I don't think you want to do that. I think you want to all be the same.
So that would be part of what the consultant would be
Right.
able to
Right.
iron out, that the RFP for the haulers are, we're wanting you to be in the $38 range, like, if we're gonna make this equal, let's
Yeah.
make it equal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? But again, the consultant would be,
Mhm.
we're not consultants, we're trying to be as
Right.
good as we can on this topic. But I think that's the key part for us to answer a lot of those questions. And Carol, that consultant might also be able to dig into data from other professional
Sources.
communities on being able to say what that self-hauler stuff really looks like.
And on this, on that adjusted timeline, do we then need to add something about an ordinance? Because there's no mention of the ordinance in there. So obviously, we don't want to release an RFP on this next July, August, unless we have passed an ordinance.
Well,
Right.
Interestingly enough, it appeared, and granted, I'm trying to do some historical research because 2012 was kind of a long time ago, but, kind of. But what it appears that Lowndes County did is it looks like I can't speak to their bid process, but they had selected their provider. They passed their ordinance and simultaneously granted the franchise. And then it just didn't go into effect for 2 to 3 months to give everybody that kind of wind down opportunity. So I don't know if they released an RFP, but certainly their selection process took place prior to ordinance being passed.
Well, I guess just in there again, so we know some rough idea of when we would be voting on an ordinance, because we have to have an ordinance, right?
Absolutely.
So we want to put that in there as well.
it's a big milestone.
Yeah.
So, and another big milestone to everyone's point here is, what are you gonna vote on? So, so I'm hearing everybody okay with the resolution. It's a little more flexible than an ordinance, right? So if we go with the resolution is gonna give us direction to go a certain direction. To your point, Commissioner Culpepper, the resolution will also have a budgetary impact. So
Right.
there's a decision made on the resolution.
We need a budget, we need a
You're also
budget.
saying, hey, we're serious about this because here's the budget to go do it.
Yeah, there needs to be that in there.
Now, like an estimate or what a consultant would call.
I agree.
Yeah.
Before we go.
Right.
By next,
Hopefully by
by the,
Tuesday.
yeah.
Next week.
Yeah, so then we've got the work session, we're gonna hear from our colleagues, we've got Patrick, there's not much mention here about the advisory board, solid waste advisory board, but that did sort of kick us off, it's been studied there too. We might want
I think it's in
in the beginning, but, and then we'll know more, but it could be,
Yeah, November.
not, if it, we've got November to vote, and we've got December to vote.
It's,
November or December.
It's in
Yeah.
it's a hope. I hope.
Because we do want the studying to be
Right.
wrapped up with an action. And a lot of the action and being able to make an action without a lot of the details. Because action has to happen to get to the details,
Mhm.
which is kind of new here.
I'm not a new territory. I'm just going to, while we're putting all this together, keep in mind the rural areas, because that's where you're going to get, I'm going to get some pushback from. So whatever we come up with.
Yeah, I'm gonna get pushback all. I think we're gonna get pushed back all areas.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. This,
Just put it, like transfer station or something like that, or like a collecting area in the rural places so it's not.
Well, that's part of the problem. We're getting dumping at, but having to eliminate the one at the mall, the roll carts where you would self-deliver your, you would self-deliver your recycling. That's where the dumping's happening.
right,
That's, and so
Yeah,
they had
you'd
to
have to have
close the mall
key card to
because
get in.
things weren't even getting in the containers
Mhm.
with tons of signs and the camera was the key. But anyway, so again, we're back to what's really happening out there with people's trash. and
And
recycling.
I just think that people don't know the bigger problems. They just know about their little bag of trash. And,
And their bill.
and their bill. So I just think, just break it down as simple as we can. Use some cartoons, and some memes. Use some memes to tell the story.
Presentation full of me.
Yeah.
So then you got your question slide at the end. So that's the whole presentation. Obviously, there's
Okay.
a lot of stuff that we're gonna take and we're gonna add and edit based on the comments that y'all made. But if y'all want to,
I would say put one thing in there, I'm saying it right now, is just to put a map, Clark County map with where the, that the solid waste area actually already is right now. That would be
Okay.
helpful to know for
Yeah, or
commission.
split the slide that says the current service district and have that highlighted. Then you have the other map and then you get a meme and you have trucks, like
Yeah.
100 trucks.
Oh, right, go
in a
in-
circle all day around and everyone is. And then the one for the current service district is just once a week, real slow, just. Now you get it. Oh, man.
Are we good?
What do we need to share?
Does this,
Cover everything?
are we good here, staff, in terms of getting us ready for next week? Have we?
Yes, so for me, this was extremely helpful. I know this was super in-depth and we talked a lot about details, but this is super helpful because you guys are looking at it through the lens of your constituents.
Uh-huh.
And colleagues.
And
Colleagues.
colleagues.
And that's even harder.
The RFP, anybody allowed to bid on it, or is it just going out to our current hauler?
It
So
has.
anybody would be allowed to bid on it. I will tell you, Lowndes County, and I'm sure the consultant would do this, but the Lowndes County had, I think, a list of 20 different criteria they use to evaluate
What's that?
franchisee, 24. And they're quite detailed. So I think,
if I want to mention something.
I can see there might
To go
be,
to the work session.
The full.
an unintentional advantage to people who already operate locally based on some of the criteria that are in this, for example, but
Those
anybody.
things.
Okay,
But there's certain criteria to make sure that the
Yes.
necessity.
Absolutely.
The RFP to happen is we lose.
oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I did just get a nod here, that we need to have a vote here, that we move this, this PowerPoint and franchising summary and all included in here to the, mayor and commission for the work session and the voting cycle, the agenda cycle. So if I could have a motion on that,
Yeah, somebody who doesn't have the
So-
urban service district. Go ahead.
So moved. A motion exactly to the effect expressed by the chair.
do we have a second?
You're not gonna do it?
John?
Do you have cell collars in your district?
No,
I do.
It's almost entirely self-following.
so
I'll second it, even though I don't have the cell collars.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
All in favor of moving this discussion to this is what we're not doing. We're not voting on it. We're just talking about moving this to the full commission.
Yeah. Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
All against, nay. Okay, we have it. We can move it on to the full commission
Thank you.
for review.
well done.
Overview.
I'll add that.
A lot of work, yeah. Some stuff.
We're getting in your weeds.
It's tough. It is.
But Suki's gonna present. At the litter abatement suggested that Tony, is that the camera down, Tony, be there, because when people start asking him, he's got the details of that.
It's like, I can
But
put
the,
some
the
ideas
extra
in.
material wouldn't have to be in the packet supporting the data.
Right.
That could just be some of that, those flyers.
You want to confirm quorum? for-
Oh, yeah, sorry.
November 7th.
No. No. Is that,
November 7th.
is that really enough that the November 1 vote? I mean, what, is that the, is that the Thursday after work session?
It's the Thursday right after the voting day.
Okay.
And so if it comes back to committee, then the idea, I guess, would be that if the chair so desires, we could talk about it here on the 7th and then potentially get it kicked back out for an agenda
Right.
setting on the 19th.
Can I offer an alternative?
Sure.
I know it would be Halloween, but I anticipate between the election and the voting meeting in November, that coming in the very next day, we might be less prepared than if we did it the week prior.
I won't be here the week.
Okay.
And let's see where we're at. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's at the end of October, the fifth Tuesday. of
The third-
October.
The 31st is there.
So, fifth Tuesday. Yeah, fourth, fifth.
Just putting another kink in here. Well, I think it's okay. Today is 5 weeks from today because I will be leaving town.
All
5
right,
weeks after my
next question.
baby.
Who can do the 7th?
I can tentatively do the 7th. I might.
Yeah, I can be here, just,
Okay.
it's just gonna,
That's all.
I just anticipate that it's gonna be a,
Yeah,
It'll be a mild week.
anyway, so it'll be all right. It'll be all right.
It'll be all right.
It's 1 o'clock, right?
So Wednesday
Yeah.
Wednesday vote,
Okay, so next,
RC.
Tuesday election day, Wednesday vote, Thursday RC.
and
Yes.
well, I assume that we will, assuming that it maybe just goes through the agenda cycle without coming back, will the LRC will be ready to move on one of these other topics?
Or it gets to the voting meeting and gets,
Right,
then we'd be talking about it again, fresh.
right,
From the
fresh,
forward.
right, but we do want to be ready for our developing a process for creating new tax allocation.
Or if it goes through, we
Districts.
take it off, take the day off. It's gonna be a challenge.
We will see.
Yep.
If it's gonna
I
be a
think
challenge, that's right.
Tuesday, we'll have a glimpse.
Yes, we will. Okay, we ready to,
It sounds like we'll have a quorum as needed.
yes,
So,
yes, yeah.
move to adjourn.
there you go.
All in favor?